in terms of how they operate, because in my understanding, Web3 is something decentralized, but I don't really understand how it works actually to be decentralized as a company.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a good question, and it's a good place to start in your search for knowledge. A lot of people, even in this space that have experience, don't really understand this either, and I think that they also don't understand what it truly means to be a Web3 company. I like to use, like, I like to, when I'm doing due diligence on projects, you know, because we're an investment firm as well, I like to pay attention to how they call themselves, you know, because if you have the mentality that you're a company, you probably don't have the mindset that that your intention is to decentralize. You know, even Web3 project. The difference is, if they call themselves a project, then I know that, okay, that's a bit better of a mentality, because in a Web3 company, you have the intention to decentralize. And so no longer is there a company structure where you own this protocol. Eventually, it will be decentralized, meaning that's owned by everybody. It's owned by the token holders, right? Not owned by the founders who created this entity or this project. So I'm really careful to pay attention, you know, especially when doing due diligence. If they call themselves a decentralized project, or they want to be, listening for that, you know. But these days, you know, there were some exceptions, right? Like with Bitcoin was probably an exception, but most of the time these days, you have everything starts centralized, you know, and so you have, like, everything that we're building at Master Ventures in our venture studio is centralized at first, with the intention of how do we decentralize this thing over time, you know, because whereas Bitcoin took, you know, 14 years or whatever to get where it is today, where now it's starting to gain some serious traction. You know, a lot of entrepreneurs have the ambition to try to have their blockchain project get traction quicker. And so you need, and so you need marketing, you need a strategy, you need, you know, Bitcoin had none of those things. So you need to build a team around it. And then the goal, if you are a true Web3 project looking to decentralize, you should have a plan on how that process works, because you can't just launch a project that has smart contracts that's supposed to be decentralized and then just decentralize everything on day one. You kind of can, but then you lose the ability to fix things quickly if they break, which almost inevitably they will break. You will have problems that are unforeseen, especially as you start to, you know, onboard users. And so you want to be able to be quick and nimble in the ability to update and fix code and improve. And if something really bad happens, like a smart contract hack or an exploit, you want to be able to, you know, stop everything, figure out where the breach was, you know, and the vulnerability, and then be able to fix that. So eventually on that path to decentralization, eventually one day, hopefully the project does become decentralized. And at that point, none of the original team can unilaterally make a decision to change something in the ecosystem. You know, that needs to then have consensus, needs to have a voting process, and there's lots of different voting types of mechanisms out there. And this is still a discussion that's ongoing, is like, what is the best way to vote? Is it one token, one vote, or there's something called quadratic voting? You know, there's a lot of people who are working on voting mechanisms. So yeah, I think it's a really big difference. You know, and then you have a lot of people who are building Web2 companies that facilitates Web3 tokens. You know, think of these as like Binance or FTX or Coinbase or something. These are legacy Web2 companies that are not decentralized. They're not Web3 companies. They're Web2 companies that service the Web3 industry, you know, and so that's another distinction there that's important.
Yeah, so actually the mindset when you build the Web3 companies is completely different. And for the founder, what's the main point to build the, I know it's decentralizing, but how do they benefit from it then? If you're
The
funding
founder,
something that, yeah, if you're building something that is decentralized, how it will benefit the founder? Yeah.
it's a great question. And one that, again, believe it or not, these are very good questions, you know, and even people who have been in the space for a long time don't understand the actual answer to these. They might think that they do, but they don't. So, and this often comes, I can give you a simple answer, but I'd rather give you a little bit more detailed answer. So the intention should be, if you're really trying to build something disruptive, meaning that you're using decentralization as the core kind of governance, which removes middlemen, you know, which makes the entire operation more efficient, you know, and we use this example a lot of Uber, for example, right? Like if you, Uber is really easy to use, everyone uses it, and we all know how it works, but we never like call the corporate office of Uber, right? It just works really well. And
Yeah.
so let's say that to get from your house to the airport, you know, it's $100 in Uber, right? And then Uber, the company, takes $30 from that or whatever. So the driver makes $70, you pay $100, and Uber makes $30 on that ride from your house to the airport. Now, what you could do is build a decentralized version of Uber where it's built into a decentralized protocol, and somebody has to build that, right? The founders and the team have to build that. And so what they would do is they would build all the software and put it on blockchain and make sure that everything can run autonomously. And if they do a good job, it would feel exactly like Uber, right? You wouldn't even know that you're using a decentralized application. And the difference is that no longer is the middleman, the corporate office of the corporation of Uber, extracting that value from that transaction between the passenger and the driver. You have a peer-to-peer transaction, direct, you know, removing the middleman. And so in this instance, maybe your ride from your house to the airport is only $90, and the driver gets to keep $89, and $1 goes back to incentivizing people to secure the network, right? In Bitcoin, you would call them validators, or in Ethereum, validators. In a dApp, it might be people who are helping with customer support or whatever, right? It's workers who are helping the ecosystem survive, and that's how you build, you know, they get a little bit of everything that's going on in order for them to do some work to make sure that this thing stays alive. And so in this model, you've removed the middleman, and you've given jobs to not only drivers, but people who can maybe run some hardware at their house and earn small fractions of passive income every day by securing the network. That's that $1 fee. But the most important thing here is that for drivers and passengers, the experience, the user experience, UI, UX, feels identical to Uber. So if I'm a driver and I know that if I'm giving you a ride to the airport and I use Uber, I'm only making $70. But if I use decentralized Uber, we'll call it Duber, I'm making $89. I'd rather work for the decentralized version because they make more money for the same exact service. And if you're a passenger and you open up, let's say, a ride-sharing aggregator, and it looks through all, like, you know, it looks through the different ride-sharing applications, and Uber's one of them, and Duber is another one, and you just want to get from your house to the airport, you're going to pick the one that's the cheapest to take, right? Because the service is the same, so you're going to pick the decentralized version. And so the point here is that there's a lot of people who are building this semi-decentralized version that they don't quite fully understand the last concept we talked about of a fully decentralized model. So you might have people that say, hey, we're building decentralized Uber, and because we're decentralized, we're only going to take 15% of the revenue. And so if Uber takes 30, that's still not nearly as efficient as the fully decentralized version that only takes that $1 out of there or whatever. And so maybe if they come out first, maybe they are somewhat disruptive to Uber because they can provide a more efficient system. But the problem with that is you're leaving yourself vulnerable for someone else to come and disrupt you again, because you didn't maximize the opportunity of what full decentralization is, and you still have value extraction. So a true web3 protocol, a true web3 decentralized application should have a closed loop economy. And so this is the important part. So you always mint these tokens, which are governing and incentivizing people to participate in this network. And so you're essentially creating a small nation, right? Every time that a token is minted, it's like creating a small micronation. And that nation should have a well thought out economy. It should have potentially taxation, rewards, have monetary fiscal policy, have governance, and that's what a well thought out economy has, all those aspects, because you are creating an economy. And this is very, very important. So whereas in we'll call that half-ass Uber, like that web 2.5 version, right? It's not, they think that they're disrupting, but they're not. And then Duber is a fully decentralized version. So here's this is long-winded answer to your question, is in the fully decentralized version, the founders get to keep a percentage of the tokens that represent the entire economy. Now, what happens is that you're providing a valuable service to people, and that valuable service takes people's assets, whether it's money or crypto or whatever, and brings them in the ecosystem, into the token economy, and never lets them escape. So the more value created, the bigger that market cap gets of that thing, and the more valuable that token becomes. And if you're holding, as a founder, 10% of that supply, it'd be the same thing as saying, hey, what if you had 10% of the euros in the world, or 10% of the stock from Amazon, or 10% of the dollars. And so that's how founders, it's interesting, because really the founders get rich if they provide a big value for a lot of people, and that's really nice. It aligns everybody, because oftentimes, in a lot of traditional businesses, the founders might get rich and everyone else gets screwed over or something, because there's a different kind of alignment in economic system. Now, the one thing, a problem I find a lot is that web 2.5 version, that semi-decentralized Uber. So what they will do is they will keep some of the value brought in, the value accrual from people using the service, and they will put it back into the token economy, right? But they also took that $15 and put it in their pocket. So that's how the founders are. Now they have this equity structure and they have a token structure. And the thing is you're splitting the value accrual into two different streams. And in history, every business ever created has only ever had one value accrual mechanism that always fed more value into the shareholders. And now people don't understand, because they can't escape this idea of equity. It's stuck in their head, and they think that we have to have equity still. But equity truly does not belong in a decentralized protocol. A decentralized protocol should never be allowed to be sold, or cannot be sold to anyone. You can't sell Bitcoin to JP Morgan. You can't sell Ethereum to Goldman Sachs. It's impossible, because they're decentralized. They're owned by their token holders. So that's how the founders make money, is they get to keep a percentage of token supply. And if they do a good job and they provide a valuable service, that becomes very, very lucrative for them. They very, very a lot. Like I was just looking at the court case for XRP last night. I don't know if you saw the news. XRP was not a security, and I look at these court documents, and they were saying, I forget which founder it was, got to keep 9 billion XRP tokens. Like, wow, that's a lot. 9 billion. I think XRP was at like $3 at the bull market. That means that they had like $27 billion from creating Ripple. That's very lucrative. So that's how they make money.
But by listening to you, I understand that you really have to understand the ecosystem. Even as a user, I think it's really important to understand the ecosystem if you want to be part of those kind of projects, because yeah, uh, there's many factors to consider. So is it mandatory for a Web3 company to create their own token?
If they want to be if you want to be decentralized, you know, and so the question is, the question is like, you have to have a token if you want to decentralize fully.
Yeah.
It has to be, because that protocol or DApp needs a way for governance to happen, because of course, like, one thing about software development is that it's never finished. One thing about bringing an idea to the world is it has to have people who market it and think about how to make it better. Now, that can be a centralized team, or it can be a community, a really active community who has tokens, and they're incentivized to help do upgrades to the code. They're incentivized to help market the project, because they're holding shares, essentially the tokens of that decentralized protocol or decentralized application. And so you will hear a lot of people talk about the fact that a Web3 company doesn't need a token. Now, they're just using a Web2 company doesn't need a token. Again, back to what we said before, there are lots of Web2 companies servicing the Web3 industry. But I think that's an important distinguishment to make. Now, I guess people could make the argument that Web3 companies are just Web3 companies in the crypto and blockchain world, and doesn't necessarily mean that they're decentralized. Okay, that's fine. We're talking about semantics here, right? But really, I think that Web3 title is a little bit misleading then, right? And in my opinion, I've always thought that Web3 meant decentralization, and so decentralized protocols and applications need a token. Centralized companies do not.
Okay.
But there are plenty of centralized companies who have tokens, right? And I think that this is a scam sometimes, unless they're very clear that this token isn't meant for governance. It's not meant to, there's still an equity business model that accrues value to the founders, and this token just acts as like a loyalty point system, right? Like, and it's a fancy way to do airline miles rewards or something, right? That also exists. It's fine if they're transparent, but I think oftentimes that token misleads people to believe that if that company is incredibly successful, that directly will result in the token increasing in value, and that's not true. When a decentralized protocol becomes more popular and successful, that does directly increase the value of the token. But if you have a centralized company that has a token, that has a equity revenue model where cash flows into founders, they can be incredibly successful, but that token can go to zero. And
Yeah.
I feel a lot of people get hurt like this because they see this company gaining adoption and they're excited about it, and so they buy this token thinking that it's an equity share or something, and it's not. And so the founders forget they're making so much money by accepting cash from payments and stuff for things, and they haven't thought about how to properly create their economy for their token, and it ends up going to zero or something, and they still get rich while all of the secondary retail buyers who bought the token in the open market get poor.
I wanted also to ask you, what's the difference between a Web3 company and a DAO? Or is that just another subcategory of a Web3 company? I don't know. I think
It's a good question. It's a good question. So a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, and it is essentially the governing structure around a Web3 project. So we've talked about governance before. I think that you can, in this case, easily replace, when we're talking about decentralized Uber, and let's say that that the community decides that, hey, that $1 fee for maintaining the network and supporting, like, that's not quite enough. We need a little bit more to incentivize more people to help with things. Well, that's a community decision, and so that, when there's governance involved, that's typically called a DAO. And so this can evolve in a lot of different ways. Some people create DAOs just as online communities without a product necessarily. Maybe they're communities, you know, who want to do some sort of community-based stuff. But I think that most will reference a DAO as the governance community around a decentralized project.
Thank you for explanation. Okay, I'm looking my question. That's why I'm looking in the other side.
Okay.
Yeah, I've noticed that there is, for example, web3 social media like Mirror or Apix, and I think it's a kind of way to.
You know
Huh?
Apix?
Yeah,
You know
I have an account on Apix.
Yeah, that's my my friends created that.
Yeah, I actually follow you on Instagram, and I found your photo with Umas.
Yeah.
So I know. So I think it's kind of way to incentivize people to onboard the Web3 space. And one of the main things that I understood from those kind of projects is that they give more power to the user over their data and so on. And after using those apps, I just don't understand yet how I have power over my data on those apps. I don't know if I said my question well, but normally the goal of those Web3 social media is to have control over my data, but I don't know how I have this control. So
yeah, so it's a different type of monetization for the how the company or the project how they generate revenue. And so so in a traditional social media platform, that's how they generate revenue. It's free for you to use, no burden for you. You can just create a free account on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. And they're going to take your data and then they're going to go sell it to advertisers and use it to sell you products and things like that. Whereas now this is going to be dependent on the Web3 social media application. They may or may not respect your data. They may or may not make it private. You know, hopefully they do. And that is a big selling point in what they're kind of proposing. So if that's the case, let's say that they do respect your data, meaning there's no data collection whatsoever. Sometimes they'll make that data available to you. To, like, one of the things that I've talked about before, and something that we wanted to build, was making sure that there is data collection things built into the application, but the data collection went back to your profile that you owned that nobody could see except for yourself. And then there would be a peer-to-peer data marketplace where you could go there looking for advertisers who are looking for your data, and you can decide who you want to sell your data to, how much you want to reveal, and for what price you're willing to sell it for. You know, and so you can make some money if people want it. And if you don't care about giving your data away, then it's a great way to make some money. I don't know anyone who's doing that, but I imagine that people will. But the other idea then is it comes back to the economy created around a decentralized social media application. So so where they can't generate money from selling your data as much, they can create the token ecosystem within the social media app. And so again, the founders get to keep some of the tokens, and they can do many different things with the token. They can, you know, if the platform gets 1 billion users and you can do micro tipping with the with that token on the platform, okay, that means a lot of people have to hold the token in order to do the micro tips. So the way that a token increases in value is by like if there's a bunch in circulation and not so much demand, like that's going to be a low price, right? It's like very easy economics, supply and demand.
Mm,
If there's a lot of supply removed from circulation, that means it becomes a more scarce asset. And if the demand increases, people are going to pay more for that asset. So that's how the token value increases. And so if there's a billion people on an application, and they're all holding $5 or $10 of this token so they can tip their favorite creators. That's going to remove a lot of the value from the ecosystem, or circulating supply. And so every time someone wants to come buy some more, it's going to cost a bit more for that token. They can also do other things too, like instead of selling your data, if it is popular, they can still do advertising. And but instead of charging the advertisers money, they can let them, bid on ad space, bid on ad space. They can like let the users, maybe choose what kind of ads they want or something. Still no data collection, hopefully, unless you say it's okay, or however they want to create it. But you can think about if you have a very popular social media application and there are people who want to advertise on it, they can pay for the advertising in that native token, and that then they can do a lot of things with that. The founders can maybe burn that token to remove more from supply or something, and so again, that's how they're attempting to change the monetization of a social media platform.
I'm looking forward to see where it goes. I'm actually I have actually 20 followers, but I try to interact with them as often as possible on Apix. And yeah.
Yeah,
Do you also have one
Go ahead,
account?
what?
Do you also have one account on Apix?
I do, yeah, but I never use it because I don't have time. And this is the problem with social media, is that social media is a very hard market to break into because of the network effect, and so creators are creating content predominantly because they're trying to monetize, they're trying to make money off of it. And it takes a lot of effort on any platform to build a big audience. And so they want to go where the audience is, where it exists. And we've gotten so used to being okay with the lack of privacy and these companies monetizing our data that people just don't care anymore, right? And so they're not fed up enough yet to make that leap to an alternative. And the only reason this what's it called, Threads from Instagram became popular is because it was Instagram, and it was instantly being able to leap into those billions of users, and they grew massively quickly. It's that hard, right? You have to have that kind of thing. So as much like there's a really good blockchain layer 1 called DeSo, or decentralized social, that built another blockchain like Ethereum that is just the infrastructure for anybody to come create their own social media application. And they thought about a lot of really cool, important things. Like if you're on DeSo, you can create one account, and then all your followers and everything you can take with you to other applications on the DeSo blockchain. You don't have to have a wallet extension. You don't have to do the complicated 12-word backup and be afraid. It doesn't really feel like Web3, even though it is. They've done one of the best jobs I've ever seen. And probably if there is something that gets adopted one day, it'll probably be built on that blockchain.
Yes, that's true. Because when I go to those kind of Web3 social media platform, I've noticed that there are people that already have a certain kind of mindset, that we understand a little bit the philosophy behind Web3, but not a person. Like, you have to get a certain mindset to get into. I had the impression to really understand Web3, because people really long for this dopamine shot, and it's they're used to it, and they don't see really the value behind what is being built in Web3. Lastly, I've written an article about avatars and the use of avatars in the metaverse and personal branding and so on. And the digital identity on the internet. And I've made some research, but I'm a bit confused because there are different type of digital identities that I found. I don't know if you are familiar with it, but maybe I can have your insight about it, because everything is now decentralized and no, digitalized. Sorry. And for example, I found that there's some list of digital identity that you can use, like user-centric identity, federal identity, self-sovereign identity, social identity. And why is that? Why do we need those kind of things in the first place? Because I think they are building something, but yeah, the
So
I don't know, because
yeah, so
yeah,
this is a big question, and it is a lot to it, right? And I think everybody that understands Web3 understands the need for a digital identity. It is, and part of the ethos of blockchain is privacy, right? It's
yeah,
privacy and pseudo anonymity. And so having a way to validate the human behind an avatar, to me, is really important, right? It's credibility. And this is something that we were actually building a project called Hero, where we were trying to figure out how to tie a physical human being to their Web3 identity. And I think that you need to do that through biometrics. And but everything is done in what's called zero knowledge, so that only machines can understand the information, but it's private to all public viewers who are seeing the blockchain. This solves great big problems. It solves the ability for privacy to be preserved, but things to be authenticated. And so we need to be able to have a digital identity that we own to do things like we talked before. Like if you want to collect data to your own thing, or you want to have your medical records, for example, in your digital identity, where you can go to a hospital and they say, hey, I see that you're here for this treatment. Do you have your past medical records? Yeah, sure. Here, let me just scan my QR code, and then you give them permissions, right? So you can own all of your digital documentation, and it's verifiable as well. Also, verifiable credentials are important too. So, if you want to go to a job interview and someone asks if you went to Harvard or not, there's a way for Harvard to issue to your digital identity a verifiable credential that is verified by the Harvard website when they just like scan it, or put the ID or whatever, and then it can validate the fact that you did go to Harvard and you did graduate, and you will own that because it's in your wallet or tied to your digital identity. There's just the ability to also, you can do things like, have a reputation on your digital identity that can follow you around. And so people can know, if you're a good actor and that you're nice to do business with, or nice to go on a date with, or whatever, and so there's reputation. It's also a way for things like, cookies and things like that to be tracked, but you own them, so that if you go to another website or Web3 application and it says, hey, do you want to start from scratch, or can you share some of this stuff with us? And then you can say, yeah, I'll share some of the stuff with you, so I don't have to start from scratch, for example, or whatever. It's a way for you to take everything that you own, either digital assets or verified credentials or reputation or data, across the entire Web3 world and metaverse with you, and that is your online identity. And if done right, it should be done, in my opinion, in a way that's pseudonymous, to where you can participate in a job, in a metaverse game, whatever, and people will know by looking at your digital identity that you have some sort of track record that maybe you want to show off. Maybe you're a big gamer, and you want to show off all of the awards that you've won from completing different quests and tasks and games. and you could, and when you win that, they give you some sort of NFT that goes onto your digital identity, and you can take that across the whole Web3 world with you, and people can validate the fact that you're not bullshitting. So that's, you asked me questions about different ways to call a digital identity self-sovereign. I think you said some other ones. I'm pretty sure they're all encompassing, and digital identity is just the but that's not true, right? Self-sovereign means that you own the digital identity. We know that people like China have social credit scoring systems where
Yeah.
it's not a self-sovereign identity. That's a government issued digital identity. And so self-sovereign is important. That's our privacy preserving rights as human beings, to have that privacy of our identity. And so, there's governments all over the world who will be issuing digital identities that are not self-sovereign. They're controlled by governments. And that's kind of, in my opinion, quite a dystopian future, whereas a self-sovereign digital identity is kind of the utopian workaround for that.
Okay. So maybe we will need a little bit of all those things at the end. I think all those kind of identity will be required, because I was a little bit lost. I knew that this digital identity was important, but I found many different types of digital identity, and I was a little bit lost of why there are so many types on the internet. But yeah, you answered my question quite well. Thank you. My last question would be about refi, because that's something that I heard a lot on LinkedIn, for example. And we also always talk about why crypto is using many energy and something like that. And in your opinion, what is the potential of a refi? And isn't, because for me, for example, I am just scratching the surface and I don't really understand what it is exactly. But in your
Sorry,
opinion,
are you saying refi, like REFI?
yeah, regenerative finance.
Oof, you got me there. I have no idea what that is.
Okay, okay.
Can you give
I
me
am reading a
maybe?
lot of those kind of posts on LinkedIn, so I I don't understand the ecosystem myself so far, but it's like the being eco-responsible in the blockchain, in the finance, like the carbon footprint and something like that.
Oh yeah. So I don't I personally don't like these carbon footprint things. I think that it's all, like the fact that you can have a company like ExxonMobil or one of these huge oil companies be on the list of the top 10 most green companies in the world by buying carbon credits is all, to me, a political bullshit campaign. And so I am not a big fan of this whole carbon credits thing. I think it's all a scam. And and there's just, this gets a bit too political for my liking, because it's a very politically charged conversation. People genuinely think that the world is going to end because of global warming. I think that we have a much greater chance of the world ending from artificial intelligence in the next 10 years than we do from the world, getting too hot or something. Like there's bigger fish to fry than a green earth, right? And I think we're already making great transitional steps into more sustainable energy. I think we're on the brink of maybe 10 years away from having, nuclear, or having fission reactors working. I think with AI, we'll solve a lot of these problems, how to have more sustainable and efficient energy. This is what Elon Musk, his XAI company that he just announced, is going to solve. He wants to use AI to solve all the problems of the universe, right? And figure out how the universe works. One of them is energy, right? And if you look at, there's something called the Kartavej, something like this, Kartavej scale. And that is a measurement of how advanced a civilization is. And it all has to be with how much energy can your civilization harness with the current technology that you have. And the more that you're able to harness from your sun, your star, the
Mm-hmm.
more advanced civilization becomes. And so we need to figure out, these solar panels that we have and stuff right now aren't very efficient, but we will eventually finish. That's unlimited energy, right? We just have to figure out how to better harness that energy, and we will figure that out, right? So I try to stay out of the green earth and energy discussion. I personally think that in the meantime, until we figure these other things out, we should just use nuclear, because the nuclear has advanced a lot and it's very safe and it provides nearly unlimited free energy. So yeah, I don't like this. I stay away from these carbon credits and sustainable stuff. Not that I don't think it's important. I just think it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I understand. I wanted to thank you for all those answers. I've learned a lot, and it also encourages me to always have this critical thinking about the narrative we got online and on social media. And we always say it in the crypto space, do your own research. And I love your YouTube video because you teach many things, and I know that I am not yet financially literate, but it's helping me a lot. And I would love to just get an advice from you, because I'm really, really starting out. How can I strengthen my knowledge around the market, how these ecosystems works? Because many people suggest books, or there are tons of videos on YouTube, and sometimes I get lost because I don't know where to begin with. Everything is advancing so fast, and you have to learn many things, and sometimes it feels really overwhelming. I really
Yeah.
love the blockchain word, because for me it gives me a sense of empowerment and freedom. So that's why I wanted to learn a little bit more about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna send you 3 links right now. So this is, if you watch these 3 playlists, you will know more about the crypto space than 99% of the people in the industry, because people just don't take time to learn the basics. They just jump in, they think cryptos are like stocks, and then they just are clueless. So this is the first one. Just click it, make sure it's the right one. It should be a blockchain playlist from Systems Innovation.
Kyle, is it possible that you send it on Telegram?
Yep. Okay, but I have to send it in the right
Please.
order. So yeah, hold on. So this one, but
Have you been in the blockchains conference?
blockchains?
I think it was last week. Yeah, blockchains in
Yeah,
Hamburg.
yeah, I was there.
I just participated online because I didn't have the chance to attend it in real life.
Yeah, did you see our panel at the end?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I've received it.
And last, token economy. Yeah, so you have to watch them in this order. Watch the blockchain one first, then game theory, and then token economy. So that's a really good place to start. And then also I would go back and watch Andreas Antonopoulos. on YouTube, and then watch his stuff from watch his speeches from 2013 to 2017. His older stuff. He talks a lot about fundamentals, and he's the best for understanding. You know, he has a speech called like blockchain versus bullshit, and that he's the, you know, the blockchain has decentralized blockchain, which is the only disruptive one. Centralized blockchains are not innovative at all. There's some core pillars that need to be included in a decentralized blockchain for it to be innovative, disruptive, and disruptive. It needs to be open, permissionless, decentralized, peer-to-peer, censorship resistant, immutable, public, right? Like these are the things that it must have. If it doesn't have all of those components, there's some degree of centralization to it, and you lose the most important things of what defines a truly decentralized blockchain. And truly decentralized blockchains are the only ones that really provide trust and transparency to people. If a blockchain can be changed by a centralized entity, it's no different than a database.
All right. Thank you so much, Kai, and thank you for your time.
You're welcome. I'm glad you found it helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.